بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أما بعد. The author Abu Khaythama Zuhayr ibn Harb النسائي رحمه الله says حدثنا أبو خيثمة قال حدثنا محمد بن خازم قال حدثنا الأعمش عن رجاء الأنصاري عن عبد الرحمن بن بشر الأزرق قال دخل رجلان من أبواب كندة وأبو مسعود الأنصاري جالس في حلقة فقال أحدهما على رجل ينظر بيننا فقال رجل في الحلقة أنا قال فأخذ أبو مسعود كفا من حصى فرماه به وقال له أنه كان يكره التسرع إلى الحكم. The pupil of Abu Khaythama Zuhayr ibn Harb, he narrates from his teacher Abu Khaythama Zuhayr ibn Harb, who says that Muhammad ibn Khazim has reported to us from Al-A'mash, from Raja al-Ansari, from Abdurrahman ibn Bishr al-Azraq, who told us that one day two men came. It says, دَخَلَ رَجُلَانِ مِنْ أَبْوَابِ كِنْدَةٍ. These two men came, and this athar can be understood in more than one way. He says, مِنْ أَبْوَابِ كِنْدَةٍ, from the doorway or the gateway, or from the road that comes from Kinda, a well-known tribe/clan among the Arabs. Many of the people of knowledge and the scholars of Hadith, they had this nisbah, Fulan al-Kindi. So these two men, they came, and Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, he was sitting in a halqa, and it seems as if it's Abu Mas'ud al-Badri radiallahu anhu, the well-known companion who wasn't actually from the people of the Battle of Badr, but he lived close by the well of Badr where the battle took place. Naam. And he was nusiba ilayha, he was attributed there too. And we know this is from the sciences of Hadith with regards to the ascriptions and affiliations of the narrators. And from that is غير أو ما لا يتبادر إلى الذهن, is that which isn't obvious. You think that it's just because it's Badri, he's from Badr, but he's not necessarily from Badr. Or Khalid al-Hadha, Khalid the shoemaker, who was an actual shoemaker, but he sat in a company of shoemakers. And there are many others who had nicknames and ascriptions and affiliations that weren't actually the obvious, wasn't necessarily the outward and apparent obvious meaning. At the end of the day, Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari, he was sitting in a halqa, in a circle. And one of the two men from Kenda, who came from that region or that doorway or that gateway, whether is the proper interpretation, he says, "Ala rajulun yanduru baynana." He says, is there anyone that can be a judge or an arbitrator between us? Anyone that can solve or settle the problem that we have? So one man from the halqa, he got up and he said, I'll do it. At that time, Abu Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he grabbed a handful of pebbles or a small handful of gravel, and he launched it, threw it at him. He threw the gravel, he threw the dirt at the man. And he then said to him, إِنَّهُ كَانَ يُكْرَهُ التَّسَرُّعُ إِلَى الْحُكْمِ. He says, back in the day, or back in the days, there used to be a time in which it was looked down upon to do what you've just done. And that is to rush and to hasten to making judgment. To rush and to hasten to making judgment. So this athar here, we see with a similar chain of narration like the previous athar, it shows us that from the etiquettes of seeking knowledge and from the etiquettes of teaching knowledge and disseminating knowledge is to make hukm, is to make a judgment. Is to make a judgment. And that's because if he says at-tasarru', that the bad thing is rushing, that means that if a person doesn't rush to it, and it's the proper time, the proper place, and he's needed, and he makes the hukm, then that's not a bad thing. Now, we're not here to discuss the verses in the Quran al-Kareem and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about making a hukum. They talk about making a hukum. We're here to discuss this athar. We know in brief that making a judgment in Islam is important. Making a ruling is important in Islam, and it has to be. It has to be. There has to be someone that makes a judgment and a ruling, and the people cannot be left and abandoned with no one to arbitrate and no one to stand up for the rights of those who deserve those rights, and to stand in the face of the oppressor and the bully, etc. And we know that there's an etiquette of doing this. One is to be qualified, one has to have the proper knowledge, one is supposed to have the necessary amount of integrity, one is supposed to be brave and courageous, one is supposed to be fair and impartial, one has to be wise and knowledgeable, etc. The adab of making a hukum and of the hakim. And oftentimes people, they only focus on the negative side of this. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. Don't make a judgment. Don't make a ruling. The Salaf were afraid of it. They were scared of it. Don't say it. And they're heedless. They're heedless from the verses of the Quran and the Sunnah. The verses of the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet that talk about the virtue of a just leader, the virtue of a strong leader, the virtue of the prophets that Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke to them to rule. وَأَنِحْكُمْ فَحْكُمْ. Make the judgment, make the ruling. إِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ, when you make rulings between the people. Many verses Allah talks about this. Dawood alayhi salam, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, and the list goes on. It talks about ruling and making a judgment. So it's not absolutely bad. It's not absolutely bad. The hadith that says al-qudatu thalatha, the judges are of three types. One in paradise and two in the fire. So this is one of the greatest virtues, is for a person to be made a leader and to be made one who rules and judges and arbitrates between the people with truth. فَبْعَثُوا حَكَمًا, Allah says, send an arbitrator from his family, from her family. One is divorced and the people can't agree. And the list goes on about ayats in the Quran, about arbitrating, about making judgment, doing it properly. And from those etiquettes, or from that etiquette, is not to rush. But it doesn't mean that you don't do it at all. I know we've explained the concept of abusing and misinterpreting the Quran and the Sunnah. Abusing and misinterpreting the Quran and the Sunnah. Abusing and misinterpreting the athar of the Salaf al-Salih in the past and of present. Wars were fought, blood was shed, people's lives were taken because of this. And now today, da'wah is being destroyed or has been destroyed. The Sunnah has a bad reputation. The way of the Salaf al-Salih has a bad reputation. The way of seeking knowledge has a bad reputation. A school or university gets a bad reputation because of blind-sided, short-sighted, narrow-minded people abusing these texts and not understanding them properly, not implementing them properly, and only taking from them that which is convenient. And the hypocritical thing is that they will warn someone from making a judgment or from passing a judgment. And they'll mention this athar, except when their sheikh makes a judgment. When their sheikh decides someone to be a mubtadi, an innovator, khalas, it's just. It's the hukm of Allah and His Messenger. As the Prophet ﷺ said to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, when he spoke about the treacherous Jews of Bani Qurayza, when they broke their pact and sided with the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, with Quraysh, and they had an agreement not to go against no one, the Jews or the Muslims, anyone foreign to the people of Medina. And they broke their covenant. And the Prophet ﷺ, he sent Sa'd ibn Mu'adh to be the judge and the arbitrator between them once again. And this goes to show you the ignorance of these people once more, saying that it's absolutely bad and negative to judge. And when Sa'd radiallahu anhu gave the ruling of what should be done to the pubescent males and what should be done to the females and the young children, he said what he said, which is well known. The Prophet ﷺ says, لَقَدْ حَكَمْتَ, he says, indeed you have made a ruling, which is the ruling of Allah, مِنْ فَوْقِ سَبْعِ أَرْقِعَةٍ, from above 7 levels of heaven. From 7 levels of heaven, you're ruling, you've coincided with Allah's ruling. So the point is that the Prophet ﷺ acknowledged his ruling and acknowledged his judgment, okay, and that it was in accordance with Quran and Sunnah. So there are many people who have become blind to the reality of this. And when someone from their camp or their circle makes a judgment and a ruling, it is as if they're Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, and that they're ruling that this sheikh is now a mubtadi', and this person is not an innovator, and this student of knowledge was once a flag bearer of the sunnah and of ilm and tawheed and da'wah, is now a filthy dog in the street. Don't give him no salams, don't speak to him, don't go to his masjid, boycott his classes, cut him off. He is of no value, mutlaqan. As if that ruling that they gave about this student of knowledge or this scholar or this sheikh overseas, as if their ruling is from above 7 levels of heaven. And you can't test, you can't ask, you can't question, you can't debate, you can't second guess it. It's the ruling of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. But when someone outside of their circle, and outside of their camp, and outside of their clique, their inner clique, when they give a ruling and they say something, you're oppressive, you're a wrongdoer, you have something personal against the sheikh, you don't love the scholars, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, of the garbage and the hogwash that they repeat and reiterate over and over again, that has hindered the people from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it has kept all along, only Allah knows, countless beings from accepting the sunnah and practicing the correct way. So be just. It's okay for you to make a ruling on someone, and it's the ruling from above 7 levels of heaven. It's the haqq. There is no ijtihad. It is the ruling. But someone else makes a ruling, reaches a conclusion with clear proofs, clear evidence. They'll quote, indeed, the people used to hate to be hasty towards making a ruling. Just be patient. So that's hypocrisy once more. Again, another red flag once more. Another stripe on your back of hypocrisy once more. And only Allah knows if anyone can see the color of your skin on your back anymore, because you have so many stripes of hypocrisy now. There is no zebra or tiger in which you can see the underbelly or the original color of the coat of the tiger or the zebra. Is it black with white stripes or white with black stripes? No, your whole back is painted because you have so many different stripes of nifaq and double standard. So this is very, very dangerous. So the athar teaches us the permissibility and the virtue of making a hukum, and it shows us the danger of making a hukum. It's dangerous, especially when you are hasty. And one of the worst things that you can do when you're making a ruling about halal and haram, or ruling about Allah and His Messenger, or about someone's wealth, someone's honor, one of the worst things to do is to be hasty. And that's why it's mentioned that patience and forbearance is from Allah. And haste and recklessness, being headfirst, is from shaitan. So if you're going to make a ruling on someone, then let it be based off of patience. And unfortunately, these people, they abuse that as well. And they say, oh, Sheikh Fulan didn't declare him to be mubtadi'. He gave him advice for 20 years. He gave him advice for 30 years. He gave him advice for 10 years, for 7 years, for 5 years. Wallahi, we gave him advice for all of these years. And the ignorant, poor sheep, the layman person, he says, oh man, that's so nice. The sheikh was patient with him for 20 years. He didn't say anything about him. And he just sucks up the slop and swallows it whole as if it's a wholesome meal. But he doesn't realize that not only is that a lie, but that's no longer praiseworthy. So let me get something straight now. Sheikh Fulan knew that this person, this scholar overseas, was spreading innovation. He was spreading misguidance. He was calling to misguidance. He was misleading people. He was establishing centers and masjids and becoming more and more powerful, spreading bid'ah among the people and going against the deen and going against the ijma' of the salaf, etc., etc., etc. And he kept silent for 10 years, for 7 years, for 20 years. Is that permissible? Is that even permissible for you to keep silent? And the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." He who sees an evil, he should change it with his hand. Is that permissible? For me to know that you're misguiding people and to remain silent for 7 years and 10 years because I'm giving advice in secret? Not only is that a lie, that's not even true, but it doesn't even make any sense, and is haram in Islam. Someone who's drinking alcohol, who's smoking marijuana, who's abusing his wife, who's fornicating, who's stealing the wealth of the orphans, who's being disrespectful to his parents. That's one thing. You give them advice in secret for 7 years, for 10 years, until you boycott them or something like this. But not someone who's misleading people from the path of Allah, and someone that you say is more harmful than the Jews and the Christians. And there's never been a fitna worse upon Ahlul Sunnah than the fitna of this scholar. That doesn't make any sense. So this goes to show us that the blind following people, the people who follow this as if they have no minds. They don't even care what they accept anymore. They don't even care if it makes sense or not. They don't even care if it's against the Sunnah or not. Innovator, I'm going to keep silent upon him for 7 years. Then I'm going to give him advice outwardly, publicly, and then I'm going to refute him. But after 7 years, yeah, Sheikh, doesn't his group and his following become bigger and stronger and more powerful? Isn't he spreading it more? Isn't it now a much more difficult task to refute him and get the people away from him now? So it's all nonsense from the letter A to the letter Z. And it's all lies from the letter A to the letter Z. And it's all a big game from the letter A to the letter Z. And it's all hypocrisy and double standard from the letter A to the letter Z. And the ignorant, blind, following students of knowledge and the du'ats and the translators in the Western countries, they themselves, they can't even take this false example, which isn't true, as we said, because they rush forth to betray their brothers and to stab their friends and their colleagues and their teachers and their students in the back with kitchen knives. Stab them right in the back. We made a mistake, oh, we had to refute you. We've boycotted you. You can no longer teach at our masjid. You're no longer welcome to give the benefits that they used to give at our masjid. Well, what happened to my 7-year leeway? What happened to my 10-year leeway? What happened to Sheikh Fulan being patient for 40 years for this innovator? Don't I get some of that? They can't even follow the false image that's given to them. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. And one of the reasons why this is a bad thing is that haste blinds you, and it causes you to have a lack of thorough research and thorough perceptualization of the actual thing, the actual issue at hand. You can't conceptualize it. That's the word I want, not perception. You can't conceptualize it, and even perceptualize it as well. Sight and perception are two different things. You see it, but you don't have the perception. You can't sit down and research. Let alone is that if you're hasty, it shows, or it may teach certain people a lack of respect, and how there's a simple, easy, basic thing. Just run and rush right into it. You can talk about someone. This person's a zani. This person's a thief. Cut off his head. Whip his back. Take his wealth. It's not a big deal, even if the case is clear to you. So this is from the wisdom of this being a bad thing, being hasty when it comes to ruling and arbitrating. And this is one of the etiquettes, or one of the pieces of etiquette with regards to the seeker of knowledge, is not to be hasty and not to be reckless. Not to be hasty and not to be reckless. Take your time. Do not rush. Be thorough. And then, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, hopefully you have a better determination. And that it wasn't something that was known to the Salaf as-Salih for the people to rush towards it. And obviously, as we have explained before, nor does it mean that there was unnecessary delay. Nor does it mean that there was unnecessary delay. There's a balance, as we have explained before. Next narration states, حدثنا أبو خيثمة قال حدثنا محمد بن خازم قال حدثنا الأعمش عن صالح بن خباب عن حسين بن عقبة عن سلمان قال علم لا يقال به ككنز لا ينفق منه. Narrated Muhammad ibn Khazim, who we see قد أكثر منه الحافظ المؤلف أبو خيثمة. Muhammad ibn Khazim al-Darir, we see here, is one of the main teachers of Abu Khaythama in this book. He reports from Al-A'mash, and we know Muhammad ibn Khazim is one of the main students of Al-A'mash, Sulaiman ibn Mihran al-Kufi al-Kahili. He narrates from Salih ibn Khabbab, from Husayn ibn Uqba, who reported from Salman radiyallahu anhu. He said, "Ilmun la yuqalu bihi كَكَنْزٍ لَا يُنْفَقُ مِنْهُ." He says here, listen to this athar, and once more it goes to show you the balance and the lack of abusing athar and taking them when it's convenient for you is absolute when you want to use it. When your opponent wants to use it, that's not the proper understanding. Or you start off a debate and it's Quran and Sunnah, and then the debate ends up with scholars. A person starts off a debate saying that someone's a deviant and he's mujtahid, ijtihad, qala Allah, qala Rasulullah. And at the end of the argument, when you have them in a corner, they say, I just listen to the scholars, all right, don't ask me, I don't know. How you start off as a mujtahid and end the debate as a muqallid? Or even worse, or not necessarily worse, but the opposite. Someone starts off as a muqallid. Sheikh Fulan says, Sheikh Fulan says, Sheikh Fulan says, Da'i Fulan says. Okay, no problem. Let's play your game. This other sheikh says the same thing, or he says something different. He says that he's not an innovator. He says it is permissible to go here and to speak at this lecture. He says it is permissible to do this and do that. Who's following the scholars? Oh, well, Allah says and the Prophet. How you start off as a muqallid and then you go to being a mujtahid? A balance. That's not the meaning of Imam Ahmad's speech here. That's not what's meant. That doesn't apply. Okay? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This narration says that Salman radiallahu anhu said, Kanzun, he says, ilmun la yuqal. He says, knowledge that is not disseminated, knowledge that is not being spread and given to the people. Ke kanzun la yunfaqu minhu. It is like a treasure chest. It is like a hoard of gold and silver and diamonds and rubies and pearls. It is jewels from which nothing is ever spent. From which nothing is ever spent. Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says in the footnotes here of this athar, وإسناد هذا الأثر جيد وقد ثبت مرفوعا رواه أحمد والطبراني من طريقين عن أبي هريرة وأخرج أحدهما المصنف كما سيأتي رقم 162 وابن عبد البر من حديث ابن عمر. He says that there's also another version of this report which is marfu', statement of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And Shaykh Al-Albani holds the view, he says that it's thabit, that it's authentic. Reported by Imam Ahmad and others from Abu Hurairah and Ibn Abdul Barr from Ibn Umar. So the narration says that knowledge that is not said is like a treasure chest that is never spent from, nothing is given from. I.e., it's a bad thing. When you learn, and don't give any classes. When you learn, memorize, study, you have degrees stacking up, piling up on the wall, and you don't do anything with it. You don't teach, you don't spread, you don't disseminate any knowledge. And what does the Quran and the Sunnah tell us about the word kanz, a treasure chest? What does it explain to us about having gold and silver and not spending therefrom? How the gold and the silver will be melted down to liquid, a'udhu billah, and placed on one's forehead, and placed on one's flank or flanks, and then placed on one's back, a'udhu billah. You ever think of how hot that is to melt metal? Anyone who's ever had something hot fall on them knows what it does and how it takes off your skin. Or a modern, or the well-known cliche, to take a pot of hot grits and to throw it on someone's face. There's a domestic abuse, a domestic argument, and a woman, she takes a pot of hot oatmeal or hot grits and she tosses it on her boyfriend's face or her husband's face. Waliyadhu billah. Or hot soup. To take something that's hot and liquidy, but at the same time it's still sticky. How hot does it have to be? So just imagine melting gold and silver and it being put on your body, your soft, tender skin and flesh that is full of hundreds, if not thousands, of little small, tiny receptacles or nerves. It's serious. And what does the hadith of the Prophet tell us about that huge serpent, that huge viper that has discoloration on it, no hair on it, nothing, because there's so much sum, so much poison in his head. And it had those huge fangs, and how it will wrap itself up around the greedy miser and snap at his face, and how it would tell him, I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure. A'udhu billah. The serious threat of not paying zakat. You have wealth and you don't pay zakat. It's a serious punishment in hereafter. And this narration tells us those who learn and they don't give zakat, they don't pay zakat on their ilm, it says it's the same thing. So let those beware. When the people won't give a class, won't give a lecture, won't become a full-time imam, won't become a full-time student of knowledge, they won't teach for this reason or that reason, or a third or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth. I can't, someone else is there, Brother Fulan is better than me, I don't want to speak in that masjid, they have issues, ya'ni, wallahi, ya'ni, well, you know, they bring excuse after excuse, and it boils down to this. You studied in Yemen, you studied in Egypt, you studied in Indonesia for all of those years, and you can't come back to Canada, to Toronto, to the GTA and teach anything and spread any knowledge. The next narration says, حدثنا أبو خيثمة قال حدثنا جرير عن الأعمش قال بلغني عن مطرف بن عبد الله بن الشخير أنه قال فضل العلم أحب إلي من فضل العبادة وخير دينكم الورع. Abu Khaythama narrates from Jarir, from Amash, who says that it has reached me from Mutarrif ibn Abdullah ibn al-Shikhir, who said, the excellence of knowledge is more virtuous to me, is more beloved to me than the excellence of worship. And the best of your religious practice is extreme piety, high level of piety. Al-wara is ultra piety. And the footnotes it says here, ثبت هذا مرفوعا عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رواه الطبراني عن ابن عمر وحذيفة وحسن سنده المنذري والحاكم عن سعد بن أبي وقاص رضي الله عنه وصححه هو والذهبي. He says that this report is also authentic in marfu' version. There's another version that states that the Prophet said this. It's been collected by Tabarani from Ibn Umar and also from Hudayfa. And Al-Mundhiri rahimahullah said that its isnad is Hasan. It's a fair chain of narration. The hadith has also been collected by Al-Hakim from the report of Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. And Hakim said it was authentic, and also Al-Dhahabi rahimahumullah. The point is that as we see, the athar is mawquf, and Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah says that there's another version in which it's marfu'. And Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he holds the view, is his opinion, that both are authentic, the marfu' and the mawquf. In the sciences of hadith, the ulama and the students, the researchers, they differ on the authenticity of a hadith, just like the people of fiqh differ on a fiqh issue. Shafi'i, Ahmad, Hanafi, there's no difference. They differ. Some say it's authentic, and some say it's not. And some say that it is actually mawquf and it is a mistake. And the Prophet ﷺ never said it, but instead it's only the words of the companion. And others they say, or sometimes it's both. The companion said it once, and another time he also attributed it to the Prophet ﷺ as well, based off of what is authentic according to the science. Bil qara'in wal mulabasat. Tayyib. So this shows us once more the virtue of knowledge over the virtue of worship, meaning the extra worship, the supererogatory worship. If you can read and study or pray all night, read and study. If you can go make umrah a second time, a third time, make hajj over and over again, or you can spend that money to go overseas, to go back to Egypt and study longer. وهكذا. Is that extra virtue or the extra worship isn't compared to the virtue of seeking ilm. And we've explained this in many classes. The reason behind this is obvious, is that seeking knowledge is a benefit for everyone. It's a benefit to all. Allah can guide an entire village, an entire city, an entire country through one man's knowledge. And that's not the case of one man's worship. The next narration says, حدثنا أبو خيثمة قال حدثنا جرير عن الأعمش عن سليم عن حذيفة أنه قال بحسب المرء من العلم أن يخشى الله عز وجل وبحسبه من الكذب أن يقول أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه ثم يعود. as reported by Jarir from A'mash, from Sulaim, from Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, who said, it is a sufficient amount of knowledge for a person to have that he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala azza wa jal. And it's a sufficient amount of lying and being a liar for a person to say, Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh, oh Allah, forgive me and accept my repentance, and then he goes back and he performs the sin again. The narration says it's a sufficient amount of knowledge for man to have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For you to fear Allah, that's the knowledge that you need right there. That's a sufficient amount to show that you have a great deal of ilm. And it's a great deal of dishonesty for a person to say that he's repenting, then he's a repentant, but he continues to go back and disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once again. So the athar shows us the virtue of khashiyah. And when a person fears Allah and is mindful and watchful of Allah and dreads Allah, it's a true sign that he has benefited from ilm and he's learnt properly, and that he's a wielder of knowledge. And obviously the opposite will be the opposite, unfortunately. If you don't fear Allah, then you really haven't benefited from your studies. Tayyib. The second part of that, I thought about tawbah and going back to the sin. Once more, this is not the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are not the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it isn't something that is absolutely taken. Okay, we benefit and we learn from these athar, but they're not the words of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once more, and the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are interpreted and understood in a proper light, right? What's important is that if a person makes a sin and he makes repentance and a sincere, honest repentance, inshallah ta'ala, his sin, bidhnillah, will be forgiven. An-Nawawi explains in Sharh Sahih Muslim about the consensus that if the tawbah is valid and he makes a sin, or he does another sin but he makes one tawbah from one sin, then the sin is valid, the tawbah is valid. But obviously, if you keep going back to the same sin and you're not changing and you're not adjusting, then something is wrong. And perhaps one of the reasons why you keep going back to the sin is that you're not honest. You don't have the proper level of honesty with Allah. You're really not trying to stop, as the narration says, al-kadhib. So we should be mindful of that. We should be mindful of that. The next narration, it says here, حدثنا أبو خيثمة قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن مهدي قال حدثنا سفيان عن الأعمش عن عبد الله بن مرة عن مسروق أنه قال بحسب الرجل من العلم أن يخشى الله عز وجل وبحسب الرجل من الجهل أن يعجب بعلمه. Narrated Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi from Sufyan, from A'mash, from Abdullah ibn Murrah, from Masruq, who said, now we know Masruq is Ibn al-Ajda' rahimahullah. He was from the prized pupils of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Yes, that's right, brothers. He was a student of a woman. His teacher was a woman, right? His teacher was a woman. And he learned a great deal of knowledge from this woman. And that's right, sisters. I don't want to seek knowledge. I can't seek knowledge. It's no point in me seeking knowledge. I'm a woman. There's nothing that I can do and say. Naam. I had a student once. She asked me about feminism and feminists. What is your opinion on feminism and feminists? And she said that I'm a feminist myself. And so on and so on and so forth. And I told the student, I said to her, I said, well, what's your definition of feminism? And even if you do have a stark or staunch definition of feminism, some things in feminism, without a question, is clearly supported by Quran and Sunnah. Just like there are many things in chauvinism or sexism that is against the Quran and Sunnah. And there are many things involved in feminism, even though there are different interpretations of what actually is feminism, and there are different levels of it. But in general, there are things in feminism and feminist movements which is clearly against Quran and Sunnah. No question about that. Batil. And there are certain things in chauvinism or sexism which is supported by Kitab and Sunnah. There is no absolute ruling. There is no absolute ruling. Then the sister, she said, subhanAllah, if it wasn't for men being oppressive and chauvinistic and this and that and so on and so forth, then there would be no feminist movement. Now just let that be food for thought for a second. If it wasn't for your dhulm and your disobedience and your sins and your ignorance and overzealous jealousy and your insecurity, then this woman wouldn't jump up and try to do what a man is supposed to do. And no one would have said a woman is equal with a man, such and such, in every aspect of life, if it wasn't for the fact that you're oppressive and tyrannical. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of that, of cause and effect. Be mindful of both. So Masruq, he was a prized pupil of Aisha radiallahu anha. Naam? And he was from the most knowledgeable of the tabi'een. Masruq, he says, it is enough knowledge for a man to have that he fears Allah Azza wa Jalla, as we previously explained. And he says, and it's enough ignorance for a man to have, a sufficient amount of ignorance for a person to be, or for a person to become conceited and to become full of himself and to wonder and marvel at his own knowledge. This athar, it shows us from the etiquette of seeking knowledge is to fear Allah. And when you have knowledge, is to implement it and not to become conceited. Do not become stuck up and full of yourself, thinking that you know everything and that you're on the top of the world and that no one is more knowledgeable than you and you can never make a mistake and never do or say something or fall into an error or something that's wrong. All right, that's what it teaches us, and this is the truth. And it's a very dangerous thing. And the human being, by his nature of greed and cowardice and oppression and haste, the nature of the human being is to want to be dominant over his brother and control and rule and be the conqueror. Okay? That's the nature of the human. So when you seek knowledge and you learn knowledge, and as Al-Ajurri rahimahullah ta'ala explained in Akhlaq al-Ulama, is that there is an etiquette when you get a bunch of knowledge. There's an etiquette. All right? It's also mentioned as well in An-Nubadh, this concept as well, is that there are manners. There's a way that you have to behave and conduct and hold yourself when you get a lot of ilm. There are different levels. When you're a beginner, you're a tadpole, then you have to behave in a certain way. And when you're a huge frog or big mighty toad, you have to behave in a way as well. And it's not the same as being a tadpole. It's a difference. It's a difference now. For good and for bad. How you are to behave. You can't expect to be like someone who's on the ABCs and you're studying Shakespeare. I've been studying overseas for 5 years now. It's not the same as someone who's only been here for 5 months. With regards to humility, and also with regards to giving classes and how do you conduct yourself. No doubt. But don't become stuck up, yahi. And don't think that you're above reproach and you're above criticism and no one can challenge you or ask you anything, or you can't make a mistake in an error. Humble yourself. As many of the Salaf would say, that the alim should put dirt on his head to humble himself. And we know that the lowest places of the earth hold the most water, as they say. All right, so it's very important etiquette. But obviously, as we said, the human nature is that it can happen. And anyone who's been studying overseas and has actually studied for some time, he knows that it can happen. And people, they go through different phases. It's like a child. A 7-year-old child, 9-year-old child is not like a 13-year-old or 14. 14-year-old son is not like a 16 or 17, in which they go through puberty. And they start, as we say, oh, you're feeling yourself now. Okay, they start getting hair on their chest, sticking out their chest now, thinking they're tough. They don't want to listen to their parents or their older siblings, or they don't want to hang out with their father anymore. A little small boy, he wouldn't let his father leave the house. I want to go with you, Abby. Take me with you, Abby. Take me, Abby. Take me, Abby. Let me go with you. He doesn't want to sit in his own chair. He wants to sit on your lap when he's a little small boy. Everything is connected to you. And then when he gets older, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14, he doesn't want to go nowhere with you. He doesn't want to hang out with you. I'm okay, Abby. I'll be fine. I want to go with my friends. I want to do it by myself. I don't need you to hold my hand. I don't need you to help me. They start feeling themselves. It's natural. It happens. It's a part of growing up. And they may become a little stuck up Okay, a young girl, she thinks that she's pretty and attractive now, and that she's the most beautiful thing and the best thing since sliced bread. And she's getting a little attention, and this brother's looking at her, and this guy is winking at her, and so on and so forth. She doesn't want to listen to her Ummi no more, her old-fashioned ways. But oftentimes these young children, these young teenagers, if Allah wants good for them, they'll return back to the asl, and they'll see that the world isn't what it seems to be, and that everything that glitters isn't gold. And that, dang, you know what, now I miss my father. I want to go out and have lunch with him now. I want him to take me to the spot that we used to go to get ice cream now. Let's go to the park. I don't have to go on a big, expensive, let's go simple, basic stuff that we used to do. You grow out of it. And the same applies to seeking knowledge. It can happen to you. Someone who's never been overseas, and someone who's never actually studied and memorized and read books and studied and memorized books, he's easily going to say, oh, Fulan is stuck up, Fulan is arrogant, Fulan is full of himself. That's easy for you to say because you don't know what it's like. You haven't memorized thousands of hadiths. You haven't read volumes of books. Each volume is 500 pages, 400 pages. And the book is 25 volumes, 30 volumes. You haven't studied like that. You don't know what the power of knowledge is. So it's easy for you to say that. Just like money and wealth. It's easy for someone to say, Fulan is stingy. Or Fulan, when he got money, he's just forgotten everybody. He doesn't know anybody. That's easy for you to say. Because you don't have that type of money at your fingertip. You don't have access to unlimited wealth. Do you know what it's like for a person to be a millionaire? For a person to have all of this money and to have cash flow, as we say. It keeps flowing and flowing. It comes faster and faster and faster and faster. It's easy for a person to say, oh, Fulan is selling drugs. It's bad. It's evil. Fulan is doing this. It's bad. It's evil. But you can't say that because you don't know what it feels like. Just stop and think about that now. A person works and they have credit cards, different types of credit cards. How many things do you buy with your credit cards? How much debt do you incur? Consignment, or how many things you buy that you really can't afford? Because you have different cards. You're in the store, one card doesn't work, you pull out another card out your wallet, and a third and a fourth. Oh, I'll charge you with this card. Do you have self-restraint with a little bit of money that you have? So just imagine someone that can spend all of this money with actual money and not debt, not a card. So if a person has thousands and thousands of dollars, let alone millions of dollars, just imagine what their credit is like. Their credit card, they say a black card, there's no limit. People are buying cars and houses on cards. Imagine how difficult it is to have self-restraint. And the same applies to seeking knowledge. So this person, this brother who went overseas, and he's a doctor, or he has this degree, or he has this ijazah, he may be arrogant. He may be conceited. Maybe. But it isn't your place to say so. You can't say anything because you don't know the fitna of having that type of knowledge. Just like you don't know the fitna of having that type of wealth. And in most cases, if a person had that type of wealth, they would spend the same way. You see on TV, the princes from Dubai, from Qatar, from Saudi, from Kuwait, look at the money that they spend. They have 20 animals at a walima. They have all of this food, this entire camel on a plate. They throw the food away. They're so extravagant. They're so wasteful. It's easy for you to say, and you're sitting in front of a TV screen and you're eating a 3-course meal, a chicken quarter. You have a leg and a thigh, some rice and some spinach. That's easy for you to say. What would you do? How much money would you spend? How much money would you waste? How much food would you waste if you had unlimited source of wealth? Endless, limitless oil money. How much money would you waste? Would you be a zahid with that type of money? Only Allah knows what you would do. You would probably do worse than them. So we have to be mindful of this. It isn't your place to say that. All right? Last but not least, as we said before, anyone who goes against you and who doesn't agree with what you're saying or everything that you're saying, or that this person is a deviant or an innovator, or you shouldn't go to this masjid, you can't just say about them, oh, he's mu'jib bi ilmihi. He thinks that he knows everything now. And he thinks that he has the best knowledge and the greatest level of knowledge. Don't say that. If a person is confident in their argument, and if a person holds themselves and conducts themselves in a way in which they have knowledge and they have learnt, you can't say that they're now mutakabbir. And then يعني فيه عجب, a person, he thinks that he knows everything. You can't say that. How am I supposed to conduct myself, ya akhi? What do you want me to do? To walk down the street with my head down? Do you want me to come back from Egypt for 10 years and sit in a class of an English teacher who can't speak Arabic? Wallahi, this is what they want. They want you to come back from Medina and they want you to get on your knees and kiss their hands and beg them for acceptance. Please guide me to the way. I've come back from the Prophet city. You've been in America, but I need you to teach me and give me the advice. Subhanallah. One brother, when I came back from Medina once, I was selling books. And alhamdulillah, I had some good books to sell. At good prices too. Walillah alhamd. And the brother, he bought the books from me. I gave him a discount. I looked out for him, helped him out. MashaAllah. He got a steal. Very nice book with a very cheap price. Alhamdulillah. He was an older brother. He sought knowledge before me. He had a virtue over me. I helped him out. Later on, he began to talk about me. And he said, yeah, you know, Mufti. This was back in the day when my name was Mufti. When that's what they called me instead of Muhammad ibn Munir. Yeah, Muhammad, huh? That's a long story in itself. He says, yeah, you know, Mufti, you know, he came back from Medina and, you know, he didn't ask us, you know, our permission. He didn't seek our advice on what masjid he should teach at, you know. He just came back and he started selling books to us. He started selling books. He didn't ask us, huh? And then the brother, he said, and Allah is my witness, I won't mention the brother's name or the other brother. He says, as for Fulan, he came back and he said, oh, Fulan, what books do you think I should sell? Is it okay for me to sell these books? I have books from Medina. Can I sell them in America? He says, Mufti, he didn't do this. And this was a point that they brought up against me, to say that I'm arrogant and I'm full of myself. SubhanAllah, I come back from the Prophet's city with books of the ulama of Islam, the imams of hadith, and sell them. And I have to ask you what you think I should sell. And you bought the book from me and said, Jazakallah khairan, and borrowed books from me. La ilaha illallah. Where's the justice in this? So many brothers, they do this whenever there's someone that they don't like, or someone that they envy, or someone who's their opponent. The first thing that they say is, oh, he's mu'ajib bi ra'yihi, bi ilmihi. He thinks that he knows everything. He's amazed by his view. He's conceited and he's stuck up. And they use this type of athar as a weapon against them. That's wrong. That's incorrect. And you will be asked by Allah Azza wa Jalla on the day of judgment for everything that you've done of injustice. So we do not abuse the Quran and the Sunnah and misinterpret them. We do not abuse the athar of the Salaf as-Salih and interpret those athar. Everything has its proper place, has its proper level, and has its proper status. This is the correct way of the student of knowledge and the successful student of knowledge. And bi'idhnillah, the successful caller to Allah and the successful scholar in al-Islam. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He surely knows that which is correct. And we ask Him to guide us to that and to protect us from the opposite. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.